Good evening. Welcome to the Ogden City Council meeting for October 23rd, 2012. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present, and at this time, it is our privilege to have Senior Vice Commander of the Veterans of Foreign War Post 1481, Tim Von Bon, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you here tonight. And at this time on the agenda, we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. It's our honor to have a few recognitions tonight, and the first is a recognition for the Ogden Raptors, and I will turn the time over to Councilmember Wicks.
Thank you, Chair Garner. So this is Resolution 2012-9. It's recognizing the Ogden Raptors for their successful 2012 season and the numerous contributions they make in our community. And it reads as follows. Whereas Ogden Raptors games have become a valued tradition in our community, the team has led the Pioneer League in game attendance since Lindquist Field first opened its gates in 1997. And whereas the Raptors' 2012 season was very successful, with the team finishing first overall in the Pioneer League regular season and second in the Pioneer League playoff series, the Raptors tied the team record by winning 44 games in the season. And whereas this year's team accomplishments also included reaching the championship series for the fourth time and winning a game in the title series for the first time. Players, coaches, and staff worked tirelessly to ensure that a quality atmosphere was provided for those in attendance at this year's games. And whereas Lindquist Field is a treasure to our residents and surrounding communities. This ballpark has received national recognition and has even been named by baseballparks.com as the best view in all of baseball. And that's true. And whereas the presence of the Raptors contributes to our community in many ways, the team has helped with fundraising efforts for local organizations and provides more than $100,000 annually, $1 million annually in game tickets for the community to enjoy free of charge. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell proudly recognize the 2012 Ogden Raptors for the significant efforts of players, coaches, staff, and volunteers to provide world-class events in our community. We appreciate the efforts of the Raptors organization and wish the team much success in the 2013 season. Go Raptors. And with that, I would make a motion that we adopt this joint resolution.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Wicks and a second from Councilmember Van Hoosier to adopt proposed joint resolution 2012-9. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This passes. And what a great honor. So if we can have John and... We want you to come up and we're going to shake your hands and then take a quick picture.
Oh, great.
We have the proclamation for you, too.
Thank you. How cute. Hi, Kelt. Thanks for coming, bud.
John, Dave, if you'll stand here, we're going to give you the proclamation. Kelton, stand right here between them. And we're going to squeeze in behind you.
Places, everyone.
Take his picture.
Hi, Tim.
Can you get him in there?
Yes, I've just got to make sure to get everybody. Bart, can you
This is as tall as I get. Yeah.
Tiptoes.
He always, no, I'm just kidding. And then Susie, can you move out a little ways? Thank you so much. Okay, 1, 2. And then maybe 1 more.
Thank you. Congratulations. Dave or John, do you want to say anything?
Maybe they'll make a prediction for the year 2013.
Council Chair Garner, the entire City Council, Mike Caldwell, Mayor Caldwell, Mark Johnson, everybody with Ogden City, on behalf of Johnny and myself and the entire ownership of the Ogden Raptors, including those who aren't with us, that put in tireless amount of hours, deservingly more pay than what they get. We just wanted to say thank you once again. It's been a long time. I mean, 2013 will be our 20th year here in Ogden. And for me and Johnny, or Johnny and I, it still feels like we're just getting started. And we wake up and wonder where the heck the time went. But our goal and mission statement will remain the same, is as a focal point of downtown Ogden, Lindquist Field, and the Ogden Raptors, no matter what an individual's conditions are as to whether or not they can afford to have a night out for summertime fun, they're welcome at the ballpark, whether they can afford it or not. And we'll see to it that we keep bringing, hopefully this next season, our 3 millionth fan down to the ballpark. And we'll just keep going. And God bless America and God bless Ogden. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good job, Kelton. Thank you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you here. Next on the agenda is a recognition for the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, and we will have Councilmember Gochner. I'll turn the time over to her.
Thank you. This one's a bit more somber than the last one. This is a joint proclamation declaring November 11th through the 18th as commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War week in Ogden City. Whereas this year marks the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Vietnam War. During this war, more than 27,000 Utah servicemen and women were among the 3 million young Americans who left their families to serve bravely in a world far away from everything they knew and loved. And whereas through countless villages, these soldiers pushed and battled, including jungles and rice paddies, heat and monsoon, and fought heroically to protect the freedoms we hold dear as Americans. And whereas the Vietnam War involved more than a decade of combat, and over air, land, and sea, these proud American heroes upheld the highest traditions of our armed forces. Many were wounded and still carry the scars of war, seen and unseen. Some suffered as prisoners of war, and over 1,600 of our American heroes still remain missing. Sorry. And whereas more than 58,000 patriots, including nearly 400 of Utah's young heroes, sacrificed all they had and would ever know for the sake of our great country. Among these were nearly 80 soldiers from northern Utah and more than 30 from the Ogden area. And whereas this war marks a significant chapter in our nation's history that must never be forgotten, innumerable sacrifices have been and continue to be made to maintain the liberties we enjoy. We honor our Vietnam veterans, our fallen, our wounded, those unaccounted for, our former prisoners of war, their families, and all those who served with honor and integrity. Now, therefore, the Ogden City Council and Mayor Caldwell hereby proclaim November 11th through the 18th as commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War week in Ogden City. We join with local, state, and federal agencies across the country to commemorate the Vietnam War and express our thanks to a generation of proud Americans who saw our country through one of the most challenging missions we have ever faced. We encourage our community to participate in events, ceremonies, and activities honoring the countless and heroic efforts of our armed forces. And with that, I would make a motion to adopt this joint proclamation.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Heyer to adopt this joint proclamation. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And Mr. Howland, if you'll come up with Mr. Von Bon, and Mr. Carroll.
Proclamation for you in big print. Thank you for being here once again.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's take a picture first.
I'm telling you, places. Now I'll be too tall.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take one more. 1, 2. Thank you so much.
And Dennis.
Well, I think that every citizen in Ogden should have the opportunity to come before the council and learn how this process works. I was just telling my senior vice commander from our post, 45 years ago today, I left Vietnam to come home, 23rd of October, 1967. It's an honor to be here. It is an honor to be amongst veterans, families of veterans, to be amongst veterans of wartime and peace, to honor those who served during that period of time. And I thank you from the heart for that honor. Vietnam was a time that challenged all the good things we learned as kids growing up in our homes, and then tested our innocence, the innocence of anybody who wore a uniform and picked up a weapon to carry the ideas of a free America to a country that most of them had never heard of. I think it took me a couple of weeks before I even realized that Vietnam was one word instead of two. And I have 3 grandchildren who are Vietnamese, and today they remind me, Grandpa, it's really one word, and they correct me when I say it wrong. It, as you said, more than 3 million served. 30 we lost from this, that claimed Ogden as their home of record, 80 from northern Utah. And it was a time that we weren't even recognizing ladies in combat, but 7,400 women served in Vietnam. We lost 8 around the wall. Actually, 75 ladies were killed in Vietnam. 7 were American and 67 were Australian. So it's things that we forget. It's the small things that we take for granted every day as we go home at night and we get up in the morning and go to work, and we forget about what I call our continuing great generation. You know, we talk about World War II, the greatest generation, and I'm a believer that any man or woman who puts on a uniform continues to be, as always has been, our greatest generation, and continues to be so. I thank you for the privilege and the honor of the support of this city. This is all part of a commission the Secretary of Defense has asked for, and I'm being told that we may have a representative from that office at our rally at the ballpark to present the commemorative flag to us in Utah, a flag that's been designed to commemorate the 50th year. So once again, we're here. We're ready to recognize veterans, those who served in the war, and each time we do that, we remember. And every time we remember someone we lost or someone who served, for that moment in time they're with us. And it gives us an opportunity to say to all veterans of all wars and peacetime, we love you, we thank you, and to Vietnam vets, welcome home. Semper Fi. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is a request to be on the agenda, and this is to discuss falconry requirements. Tonight we will have Dr. Matthew Klar, a veterinarian, come up and present that information for us. Dr. Klar.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the council for, excuse me, for letting me speak tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Cook as well for putting this together on short notice while I was on vacation last week. I'm certain I was the only person on the beach in Florida with a copy of the Federal Register. But my wife and I have been veterinarians here in Ogden for about 14 years now. We have helped the Wildlife Rehab Center for much of that time, donating medical supplies, caring for animals, rehabbing non-raptor birds. And we're finally at a point where we can obtain the necessary licensure and have the time to work with raptors, both from a rehab standpoint. We also have school-aged children, and we're interested in doing that from an educational standpoint too. So, in August, I had taken the required exams, gotten my certificate of registration from the state, and, was moving right along. And, it occurred to me that I should probably check with the city and make sure that, this was allowed in the city. So 2 months later, I've, spoken with most of the council members, and I think everybody in the phone tree. But I was able to finally get in touch with Greg Montgomery, who I understand is on the Planning Commission. Is that correct? And the Ogden City's interpretation allows for falconers because of the rehab aspect. However, the state law and federal law require 2 years of experience taking care of raptors before you're allowed to do the rehab and release them into the wild. So there's currently a conflict with the state federal system and the way that Ogden City is interpreting their ordinance. Ogden City is allowing anybody with 2 or more years of experience to practice falconry, but provides no mechanism for new people to come in and participate in falconry. So my goal tonight was just to briefly run through the federal state licensing system, the benefits that the falconers provide the local community, and request that Ogden City make an amendment to their current code to bring that into line with the federal and state requirements. Falcons, or all raptors actually, are regulated by the federal government under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. That has been in place since the early 1900s and has been amended periodically since then. Most recently in 2008, when the state Fish and Wildlife agencies requested that the federal government turn over more regulation of this to the state fish and game departments. And the final rule that was administered in 2008 does turn over primary licensing and regulation to states that meet or exceed the federal requirements, and Utah is one of those states. And so if you look in Utah's code, basically incorporates all of Title 50 of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and also adds some additional requirements. Utah's code is stricter than the federal requirement is. So the basic licensing system for falconers distinguishes between 3 different classes of falconers based on experience. The entry-level class is the apprentice falconer, who must have a current falconer, sponsor them, help them to learn, make sure they're doing everything right. They must have 2 continuous years of experience of at least 4 months per year before they're qualified to move up to the next class. The key part of that is 2 continuous years. If you skip a year, then the clock starts over, basically. So it's not uncommon for apprentice class falconers to remain so for 3, 4, 5 years, just based on how much time per calendar year they're actually taking care of a raptor. The next class is the general class, and this is the class where you are allowed to start participating in rehab, where you are allowed to do education programs without having a sponsor present, et cetera, et cetera. After 3 years of being a general falconer, you can apply to move up to a master level falconer. That's relatively uncommon. Most falconers are classified as general class. The primary reason for trying to move up to master falconer would be that master falconers are allowed to possess golden eagles. They're also allowed to possess more birds. An apprentice class falconer is only allowed 1 bird at a time, general up to 3, and then a master up to 5. However, 2 to 3 is really a practical limit. Most of these birds require 1 to an hour and a half per day per bird of care. So you get to 2 or 3 birds, you're almost at a full-time job, just taking care of the birds. So most falconers are going to have 1 to 3 birds. Common to all of the classes of falconer, the additional requirements are that you must pass at the 80% level an exam that used to be administered by the federal government, is now administered by the states, recovers all of state and federal regulation, husbandry, species identification, diseases, et cetera, et cetera. You must procure a list of equipment and a housing facility that's suitable for the type of bird that you are hoping to get. Most raptors are going to be under, say, 1.5 pounds or so. So this facility, we're talking about 3 by 3 to 5 by 5 feet in size. The larger raptors, you're going to be, 8 by 8, 8 by 10 size. This facility and the equipment needs to be inspected by a state inspector before you are allowed to get either a capture permit or a captive bred bird. So prior to being able to obtain a bird, you're going to have spent a couple of months procuring the equipment, studying for the exam, in addition to spending between $2,000 and $5,000 on the equipment. At that point, you can get a bird, and the state requires that each individual bird have a certificate. That part is still administered by the federal government in a federal database. Every bird has a certificate. Any change in that bird status has to be reported within 10 days to the federal government. Transferred to another falconer, it dies, it gets away, it gets injured, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to that requirement, the state requires an annual report for each bird that you hold under license. What is its status? How many days has it hunted? What has it hunted? The reason for that reporting requirement is that falcons are raptors, they're predators, they need to fly, they need to hunt. They're not pets, they're not fashion symbols. If you're not flying your bird, out in the field against game, then you're not allowed to keep your falconry license. And so, it begs the question, why does the federal government let falconers do this? The raptors are marquee species. Everybody wants to see that they're protected. And the reason that the federal and state governments allow this to occur is that there are major benefits to the raptor population as a whole. Breeding age birds are not allowed for use in falconry. Falconers take a young of the year bird that would not have ordinarily survived, train it to hunt, release it a year or two later as a breeding age bird. The 2-year mortality it approaches 80 to 90% for most species. So by taking a young of the year bird that would not have survived, keeping it until breeding age, and then releasing it, this increases the number of breeding age birds in the wild over time. The other thing that falconers do to propagate raptor species are a number of captive breeding programs. In the late 60s, early 1970s, with the DDT poisoning, there were a number of raptor species that were on the endangered species list and in danger of extinction. A number of private falconers figured out how to artificially inseminate and artificially incubate a number of raptors, primarily bald and golden eagles and peregrine and apple-meadow falcons. And they bred these birds for roughly 20 years or so, releasing them into the wild with federal support. And in, I think it was 1995, the bald eagle was removed from the endangered species list, and 3 or 4 years later, the peregrine falcon was removed from the endangered species list. And these captive breeding programs are ongoing. They do get support from the state and federal government, but it is actually private falconers that are doing most of the work. Every state has a falconry rule except for Hawaii. And most states also have falconry associations, and these associations do conservation programs specifically related to raptors. This winter, the Utah Falconry Association is flagging fences as their primary conservation program. Impact collision with fences, especially during the wintertime, is one of the major causes of mortality in raptors. And this is an ongoing project to try to flag these, especially barbed wire fences, to reduce raptor mortality. In the spring, the association has roughly 100 kestrel nesting boxes that will be distributed through the state. And so those are the main propagation efforts and conservation efforts that the private falconers are contributing to the local community. They also do rehab work. Many of the rehab centers where the public takes an injured bird are set up to care for that bird and get it healthy again, but they're not set up to train it to hunt and to actually release it to the wild. Those birds are often transferred to local falconers to train back and get healthy enough and strong enough to release into the wild. That's the second major benefit to the local community. The third major benefit are education programs. A general falconry license is really the most permissive in terms of doing public outreach, public education programs. And local falconers do that quite frequently. They go to schools, they go to Boy Scout troops, state fairs, et cetera, and give presentations on raptor biology and conservation. There are fairly tight requirements at both the federal and the state level for these presentations. They cannot be for profit. There can be no monetary incentive, movies, TVs, commercials. They must address raptor biology and conservation. Like I said, the problem that I have run into is that many of these benefits to the society require a general class license, and currently the Ogden City's interpretation of its code is that you must have 2 years of experience to practice falconry, but does not provide a mechanism to gain those 2 years of experience. And it's been an ongoing issue statewide. I mean, there are roughly 100 to 110 members of the Utah Falconry Association. Only 6 of them are from Ogden, and another 6 from Layton. And so there are less than 20 falconers left north of Salt Lake to do these local conservation programs, these local education programs. And the problem that I've personally run into is the conflict with the city and the state / federal regulation. And so my request tonight is to, amend the city code to reflect, the requirements of the state and federal code. That in no way reduces the legal burden for obtaining the falcons. It in no way causes any responsibility to be placed on Ogden City in terms of administering or regulating this. It's highly regulated at the state and federal level. Ogden City would get all of the benefits, really with none of the potential burden. The state and the federal government have voluntarily taken on that load, so to speak. And so the last 2 pages of my presentation just reflect the language of the federal and state statute compared to the city statute. Both the federal and the state statute have language that reflects that there are permitted uses for these birds, and the Ogden City statute does not. And so my request is to amend the Ogden City statute 1336C to reflect the state and federal statute that recognizes that this is a value to the community. It's heavily regulated, and except as permitted by Title 50 would solve that basically orphaning of this program by Ogden City's interpretation of its code.
Thank you, Dr. Carr. Any questions for Dr. Carr? We will take this under consideration and see if we can draft an amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And reports. Next is reports from the Planning Commission. Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Rick Grover will present from the administration.
Chair, members of the council, on October 3rd, the Planning Commission reviewed a petition from an Ernest McNone regarding the possibility of having a dance and band type operation in conjunction with a lodge and social hall in a C2 zone. The petitioner is requesting that in addition to a lodge and a social hall, that live bands and entertainment with dancing be allowed subject to the following conditions: limited to shopping center, strip mall, not within 1 block of an assisted living facility, and hours of operation from 5 p.m. to midnight, and entrances and exits do not face residents within 150 feet of the entrance or exit, and no alcoholic consumption is allowed by anyone on the premises, and the sound restriction to a maximum of 90 dB and it needs to be within 100 feet from the entrance or exit, that it can't be. So as the Planning Commission reviewed this request, staff had looked at the purpose statement of the C2 zone and the purpose statement in the C3 zone area. And the main difference between the purpose statement in the C2 and the C3 deals with the entertainment type uses. Typically, a C3 zone is more geared towards regional commercial, whereas a C3 is more community commercial. It's a little closer to residents. And so the entertainment portion is not part of that purpose statement in the C2 zone. And as the Planning Commission looked at this, they looked at the impact that this could have on residents in the area. That was one of their primary concerns because community commercial gets closer to residential uses than the C3 zone does. And they looked at this applying citywide, just not at this location. It would apply in all C2 zones. And so as they reviewed this site, and the site being up on 32nd and Harrison, the old Smith's where Super Savers is right now, and they looked at this site, and it would be on the top portion of the facility just to the south of Super Savers. And they started to look at the location, and they felt that in this location it may be appropriate to have this type of use at this location. But then when they started looking at it citywide, put some red flags in the back of their mind, and they were concerned about the impact here again the residents would have. The decibel level that is indicated here, it does need to, the 90 dB is not within city code. It would need to be 60, and the Planning Commission looked at that, and it needs to be 60 up until 10 o'clock, and then after 10 it's 65. And the applicant was willing to work with that at that location, but the problem that we start running into is it had a business license for a social hall, which has been issued, but the problem we have is a lodge and social hall are typically more lower impact type uses. They're even allowed in the C1 zone, which is neighborhood commercial. They're permitted there. They're permitted in the C2 zone, which is, again, community commercial, and C3 regional commercial. But when you start introducing the band and dance hall concept with it, that turns it into a dance hall, which in the C3 zone is a conditional use, and in the C2 zone, it's just not allowed. And so staff proposed language to the Planning Commission and said, would you like to consider making it a conditional use in the C2 zone as a dance hall? We're trying to find a way to get this to work for the applicant. And as they looked at this, still the red flags came up with the impact that would have on residents in the area. And so they said, what's the future plan for this area? And staff indicated that mixed use, it has an option for mixed use in the Mount Ogden Community Plan. This falls just outside of it, but the Mount Ogden Community Plan did indicate this area as potential mixed use in that area because it does have some of close proximity to that community, and so they talked about that. And as they looked at the mixed use type element, they still were not comfortable with this use happening in that area. And so based upon this, the Planning Commission had a vote, and it was 6-1 to deny the petition. The one vote was that they felt, the commissioner, felt that at this location that it would be appropriate. But some of the other planning commissioners felt that indeed it would be appropriate possibly at this location, but they were very concerned about the citywide aspect of it, and so that is why they recommended denial.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Grover? Hold on, sir, just from the council members. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we will have Mr. McCown, Ernie McCown, come up. He's the petitioner, and we'll let him present his information to us.
Thank you, council members, for your time. Just based on what Mr. Grover had to say, I feel a little bit more encouraged about maybe getting this passed. During the meeting that we had with the Planning Commission, it was not made aware to me during that meeting that the commission had considered this for a conditional use. That was not brought to my attention until just now. And the red flags that Mr. Grover's referring to also make a great deal of sense, which is why I wrote the petition up the way that I did. The petition is based not just on the location of the Harrison Plaza, but it's also, based in consideration that we're going to want to look at this citywide, of course. Being as I was in the downtown area in the C3 zone and was given a dance hall conditional use permit, certain economic issues didn't work out for me in the downtown area, primarily the cost of rent for the amount of space that I was getting. So I chose to close down that location and spent the better part of about 3 months looking for other appropriate locations, actually looking for locations that were better than what I moved out of. And I was fortunate enough to come across the company Utah Great Western, which are the owners up there at the Harrison Plaza, and took a look at a space that used to be a Chuck E. Cheese. A few of the things that I was looking for in regards to this space, number one was how would it work with the fire code? And I was really impressed, actually, more impressed than the space I moved out of, that which was in the Berthana building next door to what is now the Copper Club. This location is properly sprinklered, has not one, not two, but 3 fire exits, and has avoidances for not having bottleneck situations in the event of an emergency. Had lots of fire extinguishers. And when the fire inspector came by and checked out, what I was trying to do in regards to opening it up as a social hall and having a couple of pool tables, some dartboards, and some soda pop and whatnot for the kids to drink after school, he gave me a real quick stamp of approval. Was really impressed. With the previous location I had moved out of, the fire marshal was a little bit more stern. In fact, the location that I moved out of was formerly a similar type of business called The Basement, which was owned by Jason Allen. And when I went through my fire inspection in that location, the fire inspector was a little irritated. And unfortunately, it had been approved for that use before, and so I said, well, it doesn't have the sprinklers, but you've already had this use here, and so he begrudgingly, went ahead and gave me my permit. But bear in mind, we had to get rid of a few things in order for it to meet the appropriate code so that the building could be exited safely in the event of an emergency. This new location is much better. But through some miscommunications, it was my understanding that it would be okay for me to move my business to this new location up on Harrison, which is in a C2 zone. In my ignorance regarding zoning, we've come to where we're at now. So I'm not exactly sure how to use this projector very well, but if I could give you a few examples in regards to C2 zoning and why I wrote in regards to it being in a strip mall or shopping center. There are certain criteria which would qualify citywide and would not affect residences. One example here is, I think we can show, is this is located facing south, 36th Street and Harrison Boulevard. It's Kinko's. And then just to the west of it, we have the underground dance studios. And another example here at the, here we are. Now this here presently is a school and dance studio. We have a lot of these all over town. Now should this location ever go out of business, per se, and an individual wanted to open up a lodge or a social hall like what I have and be able to have the advent of live music. You can see here directly to the south, it's too close to homes. It's within that 100-foot barrier, so it wouldn't qualify. Now, given this example, which is the Smiths located on 40th and Harrison, in any one of these areas here, should one of those come available for lease or rent, and an individual wanted to open up a social hall and maybe have the advent of live music. Now, in regards to live music, we're not talking about blaring music. We're talking about offering up the advent of live entertainment. So, we're not talking about throwing huge rock concerts. We're talking about acoustic performances. We're talking about low-key live entertainment. And it was indicated whenever I met with the Planning Commission that the city code called for in their noise ordinance under 65 dBs, decibels, which is about a Honda generator that you take camping with you, 100 feet from the entrance or exit before 10 p.m. Now then after 10 p.m., that drops to 60 dB. And I indicated to the commission at that time that the 90 dB that I requested was based on my limited experience in Las Vegas. So you can see they do things a little bit bigger out there. But in regards to the 65 and the 60 dB, this would not be an issue or a problem because inside I have an area that I'm proposing to turn into an espresso kitchen area. So if I'm to have live entertainment, naturally I'm not going to want it to be so loud that I can't hear orders whenever people are trying to order drinks. So, but in regards to this area here, you can see it abuts residences, but the entrances and exits are well outside of that 100-foot perimeter that we're talking about. And then here is another view in regards to now this is facing away from those storefronts and looking out towards Harrison Boulevard. You can see here no residences. Now this here is a picture from the Harrison Depot. It's about a half a block away. This faces north. Now in regards to this location, and I'll show you another picture from that location showing across the street. The street that's shown here also is associated with the wording that I put into my request, that it not be within 1 block of an assisted living facility. Now, in regards to this, the street shown here is the entrance to McCady Hospital, which I would consider is associated with certain assisted living facilities. This shopping center, this strip mall, falls within that 1 block radius. Also, if you look behind, you'll see a large building here, which is a condominium complex. Now, that's for elderly folks, and which I would also consider being associated with assisted living and falls within that 1 block radius. So this isn't a free-for-all. We're not writing this out so that the ordinance can be changed, and then anyone who wants to rent a location, do as little as possible with as little disregard to the community as possible, can just have their run. We kept restrictions on this, or rather I kept restriction on this for a reason, so that anyone wanting to do this, and here's a little bit better view there of the condominium complex, anybody wanting to do this, we're catering to kids. To teenagers, but we're also catering to members of the community who are interested in going to bars or maybe are recovering from alcoholism, and they miss having that ability to go out and have a night out on the town. It's not something you find a whole lot of here in Ogden. being able to go out and have a night out in the town without it being a special event. Just any given Friday or Saturday night, and be able to go out, maybe see a band, or hear a DJ, or go and see a comedian in a non-alcoholic setting. So I believe that this would be a huge advantage. But by putting these restrictions on this encourages potential venue owners, social hall owners, dance hall owners. This says, you know, we want to encourage this industry to be able to come up to these C2 zones, but you have to be good neighbors. You can't just come in and throw up a huge sound system and have a bunch of noise and rowdiness and not be good stewards of your community. And so, you know, I like to believe that I try to lead by example on that. I know a lot of associates that own similar type businesses have not been as such, and that's unfortunate because that puts me in a position where I've got to argue a little bit harder for a respectable means of running a business I believe in. You know, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and you know, when I first moved to Ogden, I was 16 years old. And my dad and I moved up here from California. We lived in Alpine for a little bit, and then came into Ogden. And San Bernardino, you know, aside from where I lived in California, we lived on a ranch. And San Bernardino, California was about the largest city I'd ever seen. And we come into Ogden, and I'm going, this is pretty good. But I'm 16 years old. First question in my mind is, what is there to do here? You know, this is 20 years ago, and Ogden has made some improvements in regards to the junction and the amphitheater and whatnot. But with the language that the city has right now regarding dance halls, this is something that would be required in a C3 zone. It would be most successful in the C3 zone in regard to zoning. But here's the issue, is this puts our kids within half a block to a block of bars. You know, my daughter just barely got her driver's license. And as any father, when their child first gets their license, they go, oh, there they go, they're out on the road. And if they want to go out and see a show or attend a venue like this, most often they're leaving between the hours of 10 and midnight. Most often they're going to be on the road with what, situation which could potentially put them in danger in regards to drunk driving. By having the advent of these types of businesses being able to be up in the neighborhood associated with Harrison Boulevard, there aren't a lot of bars up there, and that risk, diminishes severely. Also, this keeps the kids, within walking distance of their homes. A lot of the kids that I'm my target audience and the people that I'm trying to cater to can walk to my social hall right now. But what I'm finding a lot of difficulty with is, they come in and they put a few quarters in the machines, but it's not covering the rent. And I've got a large enough space, and I've had a lot of bands that have approached me about wanting to come in and perform, and then it allows me to be able to charge a door cover, say $5 at the door, pay the bands $1 a head at the door. They get some money for their time, and I make more than $3 a night because at what I'm making right now, between $1 to $3 a night. Even though Todd Stewart's been in Great Western, has been nice enough to cut me one heck of a deal on the rent, it's still not quite covering the bills. So the other thing in regards to downtown, now I'm not against downtown in any way, shape, or form. I think there's a time and a place for everything, and there's a purpose for everything, and I believe that downtown has its purposes and it's filling its purposes. I believe that the one purpose that it's not filling is areas for our young people to go and have the same experience that the folks that are 21 and over are getting without putting themselves in situations where there's potential for delinquency. And if I want to put a business like this downtown and being on my own time and my own dime and not going out and getting an SBA loan or putting myself in debt. It's not something that is easily done downtown. It's expensive to be downtown. I've already learned that from experience. Paying $3,300 a month for a space that I maybe got 1,200 square foot of usage out of. And I've moved down to about half of that amount for double the space. And as I stated when I first started, the fire code regulations and things that I'm asked to meet in regards to fire code are better in this location. But, you know, once again, with the sound, the petition is written specifically so that this is not a free-for-all. This is designed for responsible business owners who want to engage in this type of business, not profiteers who just want to make as much money as they can in as short a time as possible and abuse the privilege of conditional use permits. Because a conditional use permit, by definition, is a privilege, and if you violate that privilege, it can be taken away. I'm in this for the long haul. I want the Paris Cafe to not only stay where it's at, I want it to thrive where it's at. And I want it to be here 20 years from now so I can turn it over to my daughter and say, I'm going on vacation, now you run the venue. I'm not out for just a quick burnout. So that's pretty much my position on that. And I will have you look at one last group of pictures to show what I mean by being good stewards of your community and being good neighbors. Here we have an elevation showing the Harrison Plaza. Now this is a picture that's taken from the street. You can see the distance. We're well within compliance of the 150-foot radius. As you can see, you're not seeing invisible residences. Now behind, abutting the building, there are some rental units, some apartment buildings. But as far as staying under that sound requirement, I've spoken with the city attorney about this as well. Abutting within that radius, we're looking at about 40 dB. But in the area behind this building, and it's usually pretty common, I've worked in commercial construction before, the walls behind are actually thicker than the walls up front because the walls up front contain glass. The walls behind don't. So they're denser, they contain the sound better. So maintaining under the 40 dB behind this building and maintaining below the 65 dB in front of the building within the sound radius that we've suggested is completely doable. And then the hours of operation, right now those are based on the fact that I work 2 jobs. So I work during the day painting homes and then work at night here with the Paris Cafe. But you can see here, we've got a trout pink building. It's looking shabby. You know, it's not showing much in the way of any modernization. We're not really keeping up with the Joneses. Well, like I said, I was fortunate enough to get into business with a great company, Utah Great Western, and we have begun to rehab the building and repaint the exterior in earth tones in a 2-color scheme. And as you can see below the scaffolding there, where the sidewalk is, you can't get a very good view of it in that picture, but I'll show you this one. The sidewalk was chipping and just looked pretty shabby. We've redone that sidewalk with a speckled epoxy finish. And I'll tell you what, the whole time I've been working on that over the last 6 weeks, people pull in and out of that parking lot and are just flabbergasted. They're just so happy to see that the place is getting rehabbed, and it's making their shopping experiences between the thrift store, the Elite Gymnastics, and Carl's Super Savers, which does see quite a bit of foot traffic. They're really happy to see the improvements. I can show you here a little closer detail. And you can see the sidewalk that I had referred to. That sidewalk is also, in addition to the exterior of the building, been rehabbed. And part of my lease agreement with Utah Great Western is to keep this rehabilitation going on with the exterior of the building. In regards to the Mount Ogden plan, for the trolley and the UTA plans for the building. These are great notions, but they are, these are hypothetical notions. No start date has been projected, no end date for, changing this into a trolley depot or changing this into a bus depot. The building needs to have active businesses in it, and I propose to be an active business in this building rather than have the building be an unattractive place for businesses to come to and to open up. We've changed the outlook of the building. We've changed the facade of the building. And hopefully through my successful ventures, and once again, this is based on being able to have live music, we'll be able to continue this partnership with Utah Great Western and the Paris Cafe to have this building be a desirable place for people to shop and also entertain themselves. I live over at 2516 Van Buren Avenue, and have spoken to a great deal of my neighbors about this and encouraged them to come to this meeting tonight. But they all have busy lives, and they just think that it's a great idea. They're not opposed to having their kids be downtown on Fridays or Saturday nights, but a lot of them felt like they would be more comfortable with having their kids within walking distance, or within roller pin distance, as one woman said, if they got out of line. Now, we're also having some little bit of issues with the differences between a dance hall and a social hall. Myself, I believe that there are no differences. It's just how it's defined and how it's worded. When I wrote up my petition, it was loosely based on what I had read in regards to applying for an arcade. And in the application, the way that it reads in the city's zoning, arcades are restricted to strip malls or shopping centers. And there are other restrictions that apply to them that I don't think pertain to this particular business venture. But looking at social halls rather than arcades, I think we could also make the argument that the rec area of your local LDS ward doubles as a social hall. When the bride and groom finish getting sealed in the temple, if they're lucky enough to get the temple recommend and be able to seal their marriage in the temple, the reception is typically held in the local ward where they have their basketball games, and they also have their social activities. And if any one of you can name me a situation where you've been to a wedding reception and not had to do the chicken polka, I'd welcome that. But typically, we associate wedding receptions with having the wedding band, or we have a DJ, and we have the bride and groom doing their first dance. And in regards to social hall, I had a couple approach me from Weber State that wanted to rent the place out, were willing to pay me $350 for the night in order to throw his girlfriend a birthday party, social hall gathering situation. When I informed him that I wouldn't be able to have a band or a DJ, that pretty much torpedoed the whole deal, and there was some money lost there. So I'm looking to avoid that by having this passed. So I believe that the questions that most need to be addressed and answered here is, can this be done in an effective way to where any potential applicant can have their feet held to the fire and be encouraged to be good neighbors, number one. Number two, are these safe and friendly environments for not only folks 21 and under, but also folks 21 and over who, like I said, are either not interested in alcohol, maybe recovering from an alcohol problem, but they still miss having that nightlife. A social group approached me in regards to the Paris Cafe, and she had seen what I'd done with the inside, with having the pool tables up and the dartboard. And she goes, "Gosh, this reminds me of going to the bar. This is what we miss because we don't drink anymore. We all got away from that. And the one thing we miss is being able to go out and have that sort of atmosphere. And these are guys that want to come in and just, sit and either drink soda or drink coffee all night. And they think that's just as good of a time as it was back whenever they used to cut loose, and some of them cut loose a little too much. And that doesn't mean that they're derelicts of the community and say, well, you don't get to go out and have that sort of experience anymore, because if you want that sort of experience, you have to go to a bar. No, this is a reasonable alternative. The Paris Cafe is a reasonable alternative. These are events with the live bands and DJs and whatnot. These are events that I want to be able to have on Fridays and Saturday nights, not 5 nights a week. During the rest of the week, I would like the place to have the same function as what would be defined by the planners as a social hall, as a meeting and gathering place. But what we're running into is there's not an actual definition out there. So, are these safe places for people to go? Are they able to be good neighbors? And is it sustainable? And also, in part with being good neighbors, it's not just good neighbors to the residences. I mean, if we're going to locate these in strip malls and shopping centers, by keeping these parameters that I've written into this request, this allows them to be good neighbors to other businesses in these strip mall areas and also complement them. You could see in one of the other pictures, I'm not going to pull it up right now, but there was an Indian restaurant. So I would consider being able to have a guy come in and play the sitar in an Indian restaurant, live entertainment. But right now, according to the wording that I'm getting from the Planning Commission, that would be considered live entertainment is not allowed. And then with a Mexican restaurant, having people be able to get up and dance to a mariachi band while they enjoy their meal if they have an appropriate dance floor. It's not allowed in the C2 zone. So this request doesn't just pertain to an all-ages venue or pertain to the Paris Cafe or a social hall by what I define it as. This is in a general definition, and I can see clearly how not only my business would benefit, especially being as we're in a recession and everybody's looking to create the better mousetrap, other businesses in the area can benefit as well. So with that, I will stop filibustering.
Thank you, Ernie. Is there any questions for Mr. McCown from the city council members?
I have one on security. Do you plan to have security?
Actually, yeah, and that's a really good question. Thank you for asking that, because in regards to this, by not being allowed to have the live entertainment, it's a high likelihood that I'll probably have to shut down my business based on what I'm bringing in currently. But I will need to hire security, and I do plan on hiring security. I don't plan on this being a one-man operation. That would just be idiotic. And this is an opportunity for me to be able to hire employees and create jobs as well, aside from, just myself. So I do plan on hiring a door checker. I then plan on hiring a bag and coat checker as well, and then a roaming security guard. And then also, once we're able to step it up and have the espresso kitchen, I plan on hiring some experienced baristas. So.
Further questions?
I have one question. I was under the assumption that a DJ was allowed. Is a DJ not allowed?
Well, it depends on your definition, because a DJ would be, classified as a performer, and a DJ improv is an improvisation. They'll take one recording and blend it into another recording, and everybody has their own different spin. That's why there are so many different DJs and why one might be better than the other. So the definition can go 50-50. It can be either considered recorded music or it can be considered live entertainment. So. My interpretation of it was, while we had this application in and these folks were approaching me about having a DJ, I thought it best to just lay off the subject entirely and not have a DJ and not get myself into a situation where I may be in violation. So with what I'm requesting, I would include a DJ, I would include stand-up comedian, I would include a rock band, I would include a lone acoustic act, and call that all live entertainment. And of course, most people, humans being being the type of people that they are, when you're enjoying the live entertainment, you want to get up and dancing. So of course, we're going to have to include dancing in that as well. So.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'll have public input, and anybody who would like to come up and talk about this subject, please state your name for the record and your address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Council members, I'm Walter Davidson. I live at 488 16th Street. A newspaper article Thursday, the 18th of October, on page 1 and page 3, 6 days ago, talked about bulldozing blight, proposed 7-Eleven store located at the southwest corner of 17th and Washington. My comment, 37 gas stations are within 4.48 miles of that location. Some 7-Elevens have gas stations. I hope no gas station is created at that address.
Mr. Davidson, just sorry to interrupt you for just a moment. We do want to hear your comments, but are your comments regarding this proposal that we're talking about right now? Or can we hold off on your comments till we open it for public
Only
comments?
thing I have to say about this proposal is if that 65 dB in the R or the C, whatever that zoning is, drops into the R zone, it must be 55 dB.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we'll listen to your other comments in a moment, okay? Thank you.
Well, I'm Todd Stewart, 3938 River Drive up in Eden, and I manage Harrison Plaza. But my comments have to do with the strip malls that Ernie petitioned for, not just our place. And I think we get confused. Ernie's trying to be a really good citizen, and there are no restrictions for live entertainment and that in the social hall, he was licensed to do. He just wanted to, before he went full bore on his business, he wanted to get it straight that he could do these things, and so he spent the money and the time to petition to get a definition for a social hall and a lodge so he'd know how he'd be operating. I support what he's doing. I like the idea that he's talking about strip malls and neighborhood centers that are closer to the residents. I like the fact that it's non-alcoholic. I like the fact that the kids are not surrounded by other bars and places to go to. I have a difficult time understanding the big concern between live entertainment and recorded in that, if we're limited to a noise level, what does it matter whether it's coming from a live band or comedian or somebody there, and whether it was recorded off a CD? He did turn, the music up in the place the other day to where it was uncomfortable inside and went out in the parking lot and could hardly hear it. So I think they're going to be able to fall within those requirements. I know that the report talked about it being a transit center potential, but we haven't heard anything defining it. We've just heard all the possible, and you probably know much more about this than I do, all the possible ways it could get up to Harrison Boulevard, but we hate to, restrict this center, for something that hasn't really happened yet. But.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Do you still want us to say our name?
Please.
Thank you. Virginia Hernandez Reza. I'm not really here for this issue, but I do want to say, after hearing this gentleman, that location and just what he was just explaining, I think it's a good thing. The reason why I say that is because he mentioned that during the week it could be like a social area, you know, you come in and socialize. That, and then you look at Weber State University students, also surrounding area. That's a good thing. You got, during the week, it's a social event, and on the weekend, you can have some entertainment. The thing is here, Ogden does not have too much this kind of entertainment, this kind of social for young adults, and we're lacking that. I have interacted with youth all my life, from 12 years old to Weber State. And through the years, I've noticed here in Ogden City, born and reared here, that there is not that much activity. And the way he has explained it, and if it does, it does get passed, which he's going to have a hard time being here in Ogden to do that. But I'm hoping he does, because we do need more of that kind of calm entertainment, socializing. And the area, I know the place very well. It's been run down for a long time. And if they're going to fix it up, remodel, whatever they need to do, that's a good thing. Also, I'm looking at possibly he says he would be hiring. So there's some revenue coming into Ogden, and that's what we really want in Ogden. That's why we're trying to revitalize Ogden. So, and we just don't want the big rich people coming in. But we also want people such as myself to entertain people such as myself, middle class, lower middle class. It's an excellent, for what I'm hearing right now, and I would like to see him and get some more information, because I do interact a lot in the community. So that would be a good thing, maybe get some more information. So that's what I have to say with this, just the short information. I'm saying to you, City Council meeting, City Council people, try and take this into consideration. I know your plate is full. Ogden is growing, and it is growing so wonderful. I'm so pleased with what's happening to Ogden. I just can't believe the changes that are going on since I've been involved since way back in 2000 coming, and Ogden is turning out to be really, really good, thanks to you, all of you here, and of course our new mayor. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public regarding this issue? Okay. Now we'll have council discussion.
Well, I guess I just want to maybe have the planning staff clarify something. I know we had a little bit of discussion about the conditional use to all the zones. What is there a possibility of just having a conditional use specific to the site?
No. We would have to look at rezoning the site to accommodate for that. At least we haven't done that in the past, and that's not typically the case of doing it to the specific site. Typically, we look at the use associated with what's permitted and what's conditional for that specific zone.
And one more question for you. So do you want to talk a little bit about live music versus DJ?
Yes. One of the big concerns we have is the ability to monitor. Typically, this operation will be going on after hours. And when you're dealing with a band, it's hard to regulate and monitor the sound. Whereas, you know, the music, recording and that, you can control the decibels a lot easier than with a band. And that's some of the big concerns we have there. And that's why we were looking at the dance hall as possible, another option or avenue to go down. And that's where the Planning Commission kind of, they didn't get the right sense that it would be appropriate in that. All the C2 zones. And they did feel a lot of the comments were really positive about this site. It was just when they started looking at the other areas. And staff did look at the other areas in the C2 zone. And in your packet, you'll see the areas in red on here is where those are located. And The applicant has indicated some of those, but there are some areas in there that are not quite appropriate when you get over to 2nd Street, where the old grist mill is, and in that area you do come closer to residential areas, and there were some areas along Washington as well that has some residents right behind it.
So just to make sure I'm clear on this, so DJ is allowed in the social hall?
The DJ and the recordings and that, there's nothing that says that that cannot happen. But when you get into the live bands and that becomes the issue.
Well, could he operate under a DJ or recording music then?
Yeah, there's nothing that we've said that would restrict that. It becomes more the live bands and the dancing. And then that's where it falls under the dance hall issue.
So the uneasiness is coming with going citywide, is that correct?
And I think that's, I mean, I used to play in a band in a previous life. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of all ages venues in Salt Lake. I still see a lot of live music, and depending on who's playing, some of them have big stacks of speakers, and I think my hearing has suffered for it. And I just think of that use, and you know, it is later at night. You have people coming and going into the parking lot. There's noise associated with that too. A lot of the venues named in the petition are in Salt Lake in more industrial type areas. I'm familiar with a lot of the places named, and they're in warehouse type areas. There aren't people living across the street from these places, and I don't think you'd want to. You know, in the venue that's in kind of a industrial type area. Area 51 is in an industrial type area. There's a restaurant around the corner, but most of it's kind of, it's just not a neighborhood. And you look at this location, and there's a neighborhood behind it and a neighborhood across the street. And you look at other areas in town with the same zoning, and you try to plunk something like this down in there, and I could see how it could create some problems. So while probably I more than anybody else recognize the value of having all ages venues for musicians to play and places for kids to hang out, I just don't know if it seems like it's the best place to put that.
With that, can you kind of talk about, he has been issued a permit, right?
Yes, he has.
And can you kind of talk about what he can do with that permit?
You bet. When he came in, we sat down and talked about the whole spectrum of what his operation was, and we have a business license issued for a social hall, but specifically on there, it said no live bands or dancing. It was very specific from the very beginning that if he wanted to do that, he'd have to make the petition to do that. The social hall aspect of it, with the business license, he has the opportunity to have the cafe there, pool tables, and that in that area. But as he indicated, it's hard for him to make, you know, a good salary off of that.
But with that, he could still have, as we've mentioned, just to clarify, he could bring in a DJ and still have music, but what we're saying is he couldn't have any dancing.
Correct, and that kind of is, it's hard to, you know, when you got the music, usually it's the chicken and the egg type thing. Dancing comes along with it.
What about he also mentioned a comedian. What about comedians or?
You know, that could probably be construed in it. We haven't really went that far, but, you know, possibly could be construed because there is no actual formal definition, as I've indicated and he's indicated, of a lodge or social hall.
But no dancing, is that what you said?
Well, and the reason for that is there's actually a specific requirement in the C2 zone that says dance hall. And so where it's very specific in the use section of that, that's where our hands are somewhat tied because of it just says plain out in the C2 zones, not allowed for a dance hall.
So what would be the process for actually articulating comedian is okay?
Well, there you go back to the social hall aspect of it, and we may, want to look at revisiting a definition for a social hall or a lodge so that we have, more definitive terms for that.
Well, and I think, I used to work in a coffee shop, 20 years ago, and they had poetry readings. We had live acoustic music. It wasn't anything, and that was something you could hear a conversation if you were in the same building, where I think that could maybe possibly be a compatible use if you want it. It's just, where do you draw the line and say, you can have some acoustic guy with a guitar, but you can't have a punk rock band playing through a PA system.
Yeah, and that's really where because there is a dance hall category in there, if you wanted to, I'm sure that they probably could, with a social hall, have a comedian come in. They could have, some elements like that, but the dance hall issue with the live bands and the dancing, that's where there's, there's a category for that.
Rick, with this, you've mentioned live band, but as Councilmember Wicks said, if it was just a guitar player, is that considered live band? Is that considered live music?
It would be considered live music or a live band. They don't make it, they haven't, made the definition where it starts saying one or a group. It would be considered.
So a band could just be one person playing his acoustic guitar.
But then you amplify it,
right?
And it could be a challenge to the neighbors.
You could have that one person with an electric guitar. It all depends.
We have to commend Ernie for at least trying a business in Ogden.
Absolutely.
But he does have some issues, some things he can do.
So the biggest struggle for us, honestly, is what you've mentioned, is the C2 zoning. And as Councilmember Gochner mentioned, it's not possible just to do a conditional use permit just for this one business.
Right, it would apply to all C2 areas.
Okay. It's unfortunate.
If there's no further discussion, or is there further discussion?
I've got some thoughts that are just turning through my mind, and it seems like we do have some vagueness in our ordinance. What live bands are and then if you add dancing and some of those kind of things, it would almost kind of seem to me that it would be appropriate to table this for a closer look at what fits with what and how it does go with our ordinance, lest we have inconsistency. That's my concern.
Well, I guess I might go one step further and say maybe we go ahead and take a vote on this, but with the recommendation that we work on the definitions of what fits under social hall.
I think if we table it, it hurts Ernie more so than anything. He can't do anything with it. It puts it out there.
He can still do what he can do, though.
Yeah, but still, it doesn't have any clarification.
Is tabling this going to change anything with the C2 zoning?
Well, this was my thinking. Because a conditional use is not allowed for this use in a C2, if I were the petitioner, I'd say, well, okay, is it worth trying to petition for a zone change for this use into a C3, which it is allowed? Whether he would get it or not is a whole different issue. But it sounds like it's not that far off from what he can do, for what he wants to do from what he can do. And that's why I thought tabling it might allow us to wiggle some things around and clarify some inconsistencies, perhaps. That was all. That was my thought.
My concern would be that maybe Ernie seems to be really willing to to work with the neighborhood he's in. But when I look at a zoning change throughout the city, are we going to find someone who's going to come in and be as agreeable and, work as hard toward what he would like to see happen, at his establishment? And I think we set a precedent by saying, yeah, you can do pretty much whatever you want to do, whether it's a dance hall or, and that bothers me for the whole city.
Citywide.
Citywide is the issue for me. It's not the fact of what he will or will not do. It's a citywide ordinance that's going to affect a lot of neighborhoods.
So with that, I would go ahead and make the motion that we deny this petition, but with the caveat that we further define the definition of a social hall.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Heyer to deny this petition as agreement with the Planning Commission, but also with clarification of the social hall and dance hall definition. This is a voice vote, or no, this is a roll call vote?
It's a voice vote.
Okay, I'm correct on the first one. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And Ernie, with that, we'll do our best to work with you on this and come up with some definitions. And now we're going to move to public comments, and this is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. Please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. In this form of government, all city personnel are the responsibility of the administration, not of the council. Please discuss any concerns you may have regarding staff with the mayor, chief administration officer, or department director. So at this time, we'll take public comment and on any subject. So anybody who would like to come up, please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Sorry I got out of order before.
That's okay.
My name is Walter Davidson. I live at 488 16th Street. There was an article in the newspaper that drew my attention. 7-Eleven, possibility, gas station, what I was worried about. 37 gas stations are within 4.48 miles of that location at 17th and Washington. I hope no gas station is created at that location. The reason I'm here is my next little comment. Related subject. I tried to email Amy Wicks. I was unsuccessful. I went into the office at the other end of the hall, was given her email address, and I was unsuccessful. Not a problem. I came back in and talked to your communication specialist. She sent an email that got through. I would like to talk to your IT folks at the earliest opportunity to find out why my email won't go through. I'm an electronics engineer, retired from the Department of Defense 39 years. I know what the problem is. Thank you. Oh, the price of freedom is not free.
Thank you, sir. We'll have someone from the city follow up with you. Further comments? And welcome, Nick.
Oh, my name is Nick Vilas. I live at 1516 Darling Street, right next to the pickleball courts. Have a lot of fun up there. Anyway, to introduce myself, I'm running in District 8 for the State House of Representatives. And I'm not bringing that up simply to politic. I did want to introduce myself. We were in a meeting with the folks from Tri-County People with Disabilities. It was a Meet the Candidate situation. And there was a gentleman there that's wheelchair bound. I've known him for years and years. We went to school together. And he has a problem with one of the intersections where he lives. He lives up on 23rd and Monroe. And apparently one of the, I believe he told me it was the southeast corner, it's not made for wheelchair access back and forth. And he said, well, what am I going to do? You guys are here introducing yourselves on and on. What can you do for me? And I said, well, John, I'll go talk to the Ogden folks and see what they say about it. So I'm asking if someone could look into that and see if there's a possibility of having that taken care of. The other thing I wanted to address you about was, I don't know if I read it or I heard it. I know somebody brought up the idea of naming one of the parks in honor of our veterans. I'm a wounded Vietnam veteran, and I feel that it would be very, very nice to have that done. Now, where and how would be up to you, and I'm not petitioning to have that done. I'm just saying I feel it would be, you know, as a private citizen, I feel it would be a very good idea. So that's all I have to say, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Listen to what the gentleman had to say a few minutes ago.
Mr. Carroll, just introduce yourself.
Mr. Carroll, James Carroll, live in Ogden, 26th and Quincy, Monroe, Upper Monroe. Lived there for 24 years. But I was listening to what that gentleman was saying about Councilman Wicks, okay, about the email. I feel that the city councilman and the mayor that's presiding over the city to try to make decisions should have a safety net, should have a disclosure, should be, protected, and not have to worry about just anybody out of the blue saying, well, I want to email you because of this and that and nothing like that. Amy probably didn't know who that was. She probably didn't want to respond or take that chance. I wouldn't blame her. And I'm just saying, God bless all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
I did get a couple emails, just for the record. One didn't warrant a response, and the other was sent from city staff on the request of.
Any further public comment or comments from anyone?
Yes, I'm here tonight because I did get on my email tonight's event, and it was for the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War. What I want to say is that it's an honor that these gentlemen have put their effort and time towards bringing this proposal joint proclamation on behalf of our brave Vietnam War soldiers who fought during this troubled time for America. My brother fought in that war. He was 18. He went 1968, the fiercest time of the battle. And this is why it's really close to our family and our community. Also, because I was born and raised in Ogden, there was a lot of friends, families that went to this war. And also I had a cousin, her fiance went to war and he got killed. All these people, men and women I'm talking about, were from Ogden. So I'm so glad that that this is taking place, and I want to thank the mayor, and I want to thank you members for bringing this, allowing it to come forth tonight, to be recognized, and because it's such an important thing for the new generation, the younger generation, that are not at all familiar with the Vietnam War and that era, the 60s. It was a tragic time. It was a tragic event. It was a tragic war. Ogden was part of all that too. And it seems to me that Ogden is losing or has not even touched on that history for the vets, the Vietnam War. And I said my brother, he is disabled now, but our family has kept him very well, educated and so forth. But the others, this recognition is so good, and I'm glad that you did this tonight. I want to thank all of you, and I'm just sorry the mayor wasn't here tonight to see this wonderful event. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Further comments? Comments? Okay.
I just wanted to make one final comment in regards to working with the planning department on the definitions and some of the council's concerns over my petition. I understand the vote is in, so this is mainly for planning to hear. In regards to the live bands and also in the proposed areas and going citywide with this type of petition, while we're considering the definition and what to and what not to allow, bear in mind, now the monitoring is something I actually checked in on because it is an after-hours thing. It's not something that planning can just go and check on without putting in overtime. And so I had asked planning, I says, well, how is this monitored after hours? They said typically if a complaint was to come in from a residence near that area over the noise ordinance, it would go to the city police, and that the city police would follow up on it. That complaint would then go to the planning commission so that they could look into whether or not the violation was severe enough to look into revoking the conditional use permit. So there is a monitoring system for this that is allowed. Now, whether or not I'm allowed, live bands, or whether or not I'm allowed a live DJ, the noise ordinance still stands firm. So it doesn't matter whether I have a band or have a DJ. Typically, in my experience, while people do request DJs, and I'm good to oblige them. Primarily, what I work with is bands. Bands are actually easier to work with. They do a lot better job with promoting yourselves, and they tend to have a little bit better business sense, and there's a lot more of them to work with than there are DJs. The DJs are not quite as many to work with, and typically they tend to be more expensive than working with a band. But just bear in mind that regarding the noise ordinance and whether to have a live band or a live DJ, typically, it doesn't matter because the noise ordinance still needs to be kept to. And in my experience, usually with the DJ, the most prevalent thing is the thump, thump, thump of the bass, and that is the frequency that carries most throughout the building and throughout the neighborhoods. So this is something where we would have to stay within the noise ordinance as well. So really, I believe that the question is going to be, over, what do we call the chicken or the egg? Whether it be a live band or whether it be a live DJ, the noise level emitted is still going to be the same. And in regards to this gentleman's comment that left, you can see why I'm concerned over maintaining the standard over that noise ordinance. Obviously, guys like me don't just come along, but in regards to what Rick had mentioned in the where the Wings Guards and the old grist mill is, that I would assume is actually within that 100-foot radius of the residences. So,
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further comments from the public? Comments from administration?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to excuse the mayor tonight. He is out of town with his family and is going to a much warmer place than what we are experiencing today. Second thing, I'd like to thank Nick for sticking around and bringing that information. Representative D called me the day after, and we've actually have 2 phone calls in waiting for return calls. So we are trying to contact the individual and get back to them about looking at the curb and the cut and seeing what we can do. But thank you very much. Lastly, if there is a bounce back on an email if we can get the information on the email address. Our spam blocker blocks about 20,000 emails a day. So it's quite possible it recognized it as spam and kicked it out. So if we have that information, we can go in and look and make sure that they're not being blocked. That's going to happen periodically. And from those of us that it affects greatly, we appreciate it. So,
Comments from council staff?
Just to note that the October 30th regular meeting has been canceled. There will be a work session that starts at 5:30, so there will not be a regular meeting. Just wanted to make note of that.
Thank you. And council members? Okay.
Oh, I have something. I want to thank our streets department that was out dealing with soggy, wet leaves first thing this morning, trying to keep the storm drains from clogging and keep our neighborhood safe from floods with all of the moisture we had.
Thank you.
We're out really early.
There are no further comments. Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gochner and a second from Councilmember Heyer to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll now adjourn into a city council work session to discuss proposed public art, a Harrison Boulevard entry sign, and the CIP improvement plan and quarterly reports.